Hello and welcome to the Dr. Ayaz Safi Podcast. In today's episode, I'm delighted to have Grant Huddleston, a senior lecturer in physical education at Birmingham City University. In today's episode, we are going to talk about physical education, physical activity, health, and running, as well as curriculum, developing new courses, teaching, academia, and so on. Grant, thank you for joining me.
Yeah, thanks for inviting me along, guys. This is great. It's good to see you as well.
It's lovely to see you. As a senior lecturer in physical education, I'd like to know what inspired you to focus on this particular field and how has your vision for PE or physical education evolved throughout your career?
Well, I haven't really told many people about kind of how or why I kind of went into physical education as a field. I think when I was in year 9 at secondary school, I was probably kind of quite a laissez-faire, kind of relaxed student, and I didn't really consider or think about my future, so to speak. I was just thinking, what do I enjoy doing? Let's do that. Right. So at the time, though, I was thinking I'll take GCSE business studies. I thought, that'll be really interesting. I can learn about how business works, and I used to play for a lot of the different school teams for extracurricular and stuff. And we had just had a fixture against a school, and I kind of remember it quite vividly. And whilst I was getting changed, ready to go home after the game, I remember the head of physical education at the time walked in and said, "Grant, you're choosing GCSE PE, aren't you?" And I was thinking, I wasn't planning on it. I was like, I'm going to take business studies. And then he looked at me and he went, No, you need to take GCSE physical education. You'll do really well in it. You seem to love PE. You play for all these teams. You need to take GCSE PE. And I kind of went, oh, okay. So I kind of I just put my bag on my back and walked home. And then when it came to choosing your options, I thought that suddenly dawned on me. I thought, I best take GCSE PE because he's not going to be overly happy if I don't take GCSE PE. So that was why I took GCSE PE, and I think from that experience, because you still have your core PE as well anyway.
Yeah.
But I think from being involved in GCSE PE, because I've always enjoyed physical education. It kind of got me to understand lots of other kind of areas and topics and themes around PE rather than just going out and at the time, what was basically just playing sport or physical activity, I suppose. So from that, I then went on to do A-level physical education. I then did a sports science and business degree because I was, I was still trying to keep that business element in.
You kind of brought the business back to it at the later stage.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
and that's good to hear. Yeah.
And then when I finished my degree, I didn't really know what I wanted to do. There was a part of me that thought about moving into the kind of sport and leisure industry. So I remember going to a few interviews to become a personal trainer at different institutions, but I ended up leaving a lot of them thinking that doesn't feel like what I really want to do. So I ended up declining those, and then I decided to go back to university and do a postgraduate. To gain QTS for qualified teacher status to become a PE teacher.
Yeah.
So then I basically taught PE for about 14 years before then joining Birmingham City University, and I've been at BCU now for coming up to 8 years. I think going back to kind of what you said about vision.
Yeah.
I think when I first started. I think I was probably quite naive in what kind of PE is, and I think my focus was always that it's going to be a fun subject where the focus is just being physically active, and I think I was very much kind of focused on probably what a lot of curriculums are at the moment, probably focused on a lot of games activities, and probably. Because I had a sports science and A-level PE background, I was probably more focused on the performance and how good someone is at that particular activity or how good someone is at that sport, rather than kind of the other elements of learning in relation to, you know, how socially they learn and how kind
Yeah.
of how they cognitively learn. So I was more focused, I suppose, on kind of the performance element when I very first started. But then over time, I've kind of started to realise the importance of the pupils of the individual. And there is a different, you know, there is a difference between teaching the curriculum and
Right.
teaching the child, you know, teaching the person, and it's getting to know that individual and what they're happy with, what they're not happy with, you know, what their anxieties are, how can we support that person, rather than focusing on, you know, the activity or the curriculum, so to speak. So that's kind of how my view has changed, and to be honest, and it continues to change. You know, I engage, like you're aware, you know, I engage in as many kind of conferences as I'm allowed to get to.
Yeah.
You know, I'm on social media, but I try to stay in the shadows on social media. I don't try to
Here
get
you are
involved.
now. So here you are now, and I hope, you know, Grant, like the vision that you set out, and also your career, for example, how somebody at your school, head of the PE, told you that you will be choosing PE, for example, and you went with that option, and here you are now. We have one of the best
Yeah,
PE academic, I think, in the country. But you mentioned something that kind of I want to I want you to explore a little bit, and especially for the new PE teachers that's qualifying and going to undertake the PE role. You said one of the things is about teaching the curriculum. Another one is
yeah,
understanding the individuals and the
yeah.
physical activity and the anxiety and the side of it. What do you mean by that? If you can explain or give any examples, and how those new qualified teachers could take that into consideration moving forward.
Yeah, so when the focus becomes the curriculum, the focus really is the activity or the
Right.
sport or I suppose what you've got on a piece of paper and saying this is what we're doing this week,
Mhm.
and it kind of detracts somewhat from the individual. It's, you know, next week we're on basketball, you know, next week we're on football, but really what I think what we need to consider is the child, you know, the pupil in the class, and knowing that person. I often say a lot to my students now at university is teaching a lot of teaching is on relationships.
Yes.
It's knowing your students and how to work with your students in order to support them to get the best outcomes that they can get. Whereas if you focus on curriculum, you know, curriculum can be curriculum wherever you are in the
Yeah.
country. You know, it's the same. But what's not the same is pupils are different from one to the next, and it's working within their context. And you know, it might simply just be ability you're having
Right.
to support. It might be their cultural background you're supporting. It could be all manner of different factors. But I think that's where that's where teaching for me kind of can change a lot from what early coaching was. That, you know, it's about knowing the individual and supporting the individual.
And thank you for that, Grant. You know, when I was student in school, and this was not too long ago, approximately 12, 13 years ago, and one of the things I used to love here in the UK was the physical side of the PE sessions. And that's because from where I came from, although we had the sport in our curriculum embedded, but it was not actually then practically delivered. So instead of going playing or understanding the sports side, the teacher, the PE teacher or the sport teacher would come and talk to us about the religion aspect of like completely different subject. So we will skip that as kids. And I used to be a very active child, and I used to be into sports, participating and engaging in different sports, physical activities. So when I came to the UK, and now this is so, approximately 18 years ago now, and when I saw that there's PE sessions embedded into the curriculum at school, I was so happy. And for me, the most important thing was as long as I can run around, as long as I can play football or cricket or any other sports, I was so happy. But now, looking at research as well, one of the things is coming, and we had bit of a chat on this before as well. The promoting lifelong and life-wide physical education. I want you, if you could explain and like what would this mean in practice and why this is such a crucial concept, especially in the modern PE or physical education.
Yeah, sure. So before I kind of cover that, what you said before, I mean, one of the things I talk to my students about is, I try to contextualize the fact that the majority of my students, if not all in some year groups, were all born and brought up in England and have gone through the English curriculum system. However, we do occasionally have students that isn't the case. They were born abroad. We've had students from Ireland. We've had students from India. We've had a few students that were born in different parts of Europe, and that's when it's really interesting because it creates that mixing pot of a discussion to say, what you've experienced actually is not the experience internationally. PE isn't the same in every single country that you go to. It's actually very different, and that's where we kind of say, well, look, this is your frame of reference, but actually things don't have to be that way, and things aren't always that way. But coming back to lifelong and life-wide, I've all the way up to probably a few months ago, I was always kind of talking about this concept of lifelong physical education, and it's only recently I've started bringing in the term life-wide as well. There was a paper, I can't remember when it was written. I've got a feeling it was 24, but it might have been 2023, that was written by Mike Jess and I think it was Gene Key, who was it was around the concept of lifelong, but also life-wide physical education. And then I think the point I try and get across to our students is the fact that if you imagine that a child or an individual is in the education system from, say, 4 to 16 or 4 to 19, but actually, let's say the average age of someone is 85. Actually, they're only in the education system for around 20%, the first 20% of their life. So, we're at a very kind of rich and valuable time in that individual's life to try to embed these kind of healthy kind of movements and approaches, etc., into that person's life, because then realistically what we want people to do is maintain and continue that into adulthood. I often say to my students that PE can often be a glass ball, so to speak. It's lovely to look at, and but it's very delicate, and if you drop that, it smashes, and that's it. And I kind of use that analogy to explain that if a child has a very poor experience of PE, you can smash that glass ball, and that's it. It's very difficult to then get them to kind of engage and want to be physically active or engage in physical education, because they've had that poor experience. And that poor experience could be from the way the teacher has taught them. It might be it might even be the assessment model that the school uses within the school that is basically putting them off wanting to be in PE, and therefore, are they likely to go to extracurricular activities? Are they likely to do physical activity outside of school? So I think for PE, it's important for PE curriculums and PE teachers to ensure that the kind of the curriculum and approach to teaching that PE teachers are giving promotes this lifelong and also life-wide physical education. And what I mean by lifelong and life-wide is that lifelong, talking about regular physical activity during that first 20% of their life, but also beyond that first 20% of their life. So they're continuing with being physically active and physically educated through their lifetime, but also this life-wide concept in relation to, the importance of them being having competency to move efficiently and effectively throughout their school, home, and community. So it's not just that they're playing sports, but it could be that they're moving around their home and they can empty the shelves, and it's moving in a way that allows them to live a healthy life, I suppose.
Absolutely. And I think you talked about the poor experience of a child and they're not continuing to be physically active later on, and depending on how they've been taught. I remember we were doing some research on university employees' health and well-being. And one of the professors there told me in a qualitative research, which has been published and is widely available now, it's in open access, so barriers and facilitators to physical activity of employees in the workplace. And this individual said that when he left school, he did not engage in any sort of physical activity until he was 56 years old. And that's because his PE teachers made, because of the bad or the worst experience of his PE teacher. So, and what you outlined here about the lifelong and the life-wide now, it's very important, because what people don't realize that physical education is also connected to physical activity and vice versa. And that's very, very important for health and well-being. And as now the life expectancy in the UK and across other parts of the world is increasing. Therefore, it's not just the extra few years that you get, but how you spend it, the quality of life and that physical movement that you talked about, having the showering, moving around in the house. It's very essential. But from that findings, for example, Grant, the worst experience that this particular individual had, and from your perspective, what do you think would be some of the significant challenges facing physical education teachers today, and how can a professional development program help address these challenges?
I mean, there are so many, but it's. I mean, first and foremost, I think one of the big challenges for PE is often that there is a misunderstanding of PE. There's a misunderstanding of what actually PE is.
Right. Yeah.
And I think that for me hit home in 2020 during the COVID pandemic and the lockdown situation, where physical education ended up being seen and kind of branded as kind of just being fitness based or high intensity interval training, some people were doing, and it was led by celebrities.
Yes.
And it was all about kind of running around or jumping around, and the focus. Yes, it was physical, but the focus kind of entirely detracted from education. And I think it's often that with physical PE is physical, but also education. And I think it's often that there's a big misunderstanding that it's just the physical element, but also with that physical element, I think, probably for the last 40, 50 years now, there's been a real strong emphasis on competition and sport. And I think, when you speak to, if you speak to adults now, if you speak to children at school and you say to them, what is PE? And it's often, the answer you'll often get is, it's you play a lot of sports, and it's how good are you at these sports, and it's very much a kind of performance-based view rather than a kind of fitness for health type of view. And that doesn't suit probably the majority, really. It doesn't suit that many people, and then that's why there's a real drop in physical activity levels once they finish school, because it's almost this ideal of phew, that's over and done with. I don't need to do that again. Instead of promoting something that people enjoy doing. I mean, there's lots of other things that I think are challenging within PE at the moment. I think the PE and school sport premium, I think, was fantastic for that to come out. I think the way that's being used at the moment and the way it's being kind of assessed or evaluated needs work. There's definitely an inequity, I suppose you could say, between primary and secondary. There's a lot of the funding is primary only, whereas you find that secondary have very little to no money whatsoever to spend on CPD and training. But with that PE and school sport premium, it's how is that being used? And when you look across the country, it's being used in so many different ways. And I'd argue it's not always for the benefit of the pupils. It's often for the benefit of kind of allowing staff to take PPA time or something along those lines, which is not how it's meant to be used. There's a lot of outsourcing from that with getting coaches to deliver PE lessons instead of teachers delivering lessons. And it's not that I'm against coaches, but I think it's who is checking that these coaches are delivering, or teaching educational outcomes or teaching pupils in an educational manner, rather than what has been happening for maybe the last 40 years, where it's been a very much a sports-driven view of what teaching PE is. I think other challenges in the worlds of PEs, the cutting of the curriculum is a real common one that happens at Key Stage 4. You see it in a lot of schools, and I had a conversation with two of my students recently who they went into placement, and they've basically been told that Key Stage 4 PE will now only be 1 hour a week because they want to focus on extra mathematics, and that's.
And Grant, on that sense, for example, how did you react to that? Because cutting PE, I was like,
do you know, it's difficult now because because I've been around within the sector, I suppose, for a while now. It's not often that something will happen and it surprises me or shocks me. So this isn't something that's kind of brand new. I think you could probably have, probably any university PE tutor on this call now, and they would say, yeah, we've seen that in our schools as well. So I think what I said to them is, obviously they can't have much of a say because they're a student within that school, and they will leave in the next 8 to 9 weeks.
Yeah.
I said, why don't have a sit down conversation with the department and the head of PE, and see what they think. What are they doing to try and get it reverted back to 2 hours at least? I know the Association for PE are doing a lot at the moment to try and get schools to make sure that they're offering a minimum of 2 hours a week.
Yeah.
But you still see it, and you still hear it from our students.
Absolutely. Grant, let me pose this to you. When we look at the literature, in PE and physical activity both, some of the literature that I came across with I found it very disappointing. And the finding was that certain family members, parents, are encouraging their kids to focus more on the other academic subjects such as like English, maths, IT, and pay less attention to PE sessions or to the after school clubs, for example, the extracurricular activities. What is your reaction to this, and how we can, or what can be done to kind of tackle this and kind of educate these parents to say, look, if you want your child to do well in maths or English, they have to participate in PE, for example, and that will help them to achieve a higher grade. But and you and I mean, both of us, I think we've been teachers at schools and we've been lecturers at university, academics, and so on. I mean, I can teach science and maths through PE, but I don't think a PE, science or IT or an English teacher can teach PE through English, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So what's your reaction to those kind of findings in the literature?
So there's a few different things really I could say there. So I think getting through to parents can be a real challenge because again it goes back to that glass ball analogy that I was talking about earlier, that there's every chance that those parents had a really poor experience of PE themselves, and they're now kind of passing that on to their children as if say, PE is not important. I hated PE as a child. Don't worry about it. But actually, this is where PE needs to be changing. It needs to be, transferring away from what it used to be into something new. Because if we just kind of regurgitate in the wheels, keep spinning the same wheel over and over again, we're going to, every single year, we're going to have children that are leaving the school system where they've just not enjoyed PE, they've hated being physically active, and they're then going to live their life in that way and then bring up their children in that way. So something has to happen to stop this constant cycle.
And in that sense, for example, when it comes to curriculum designing, what principles do you believe are most essential in creating a PE curriculum that truly is diverse across, and also, for example, diverse that truly can engage diverse students' communities and promote long-term physical activity? Because what we talked about is a little bit of the parents' experience, and and also the students, either positive or negative experiences. But we don't want that to continue, for example, that negative experience. What we want is a positive experience for these kids, and in the future, so they can help and encourage and guide their kids to participate in PE and physical activity and other sports sessions. So what do you think when it comes to curriculum designing can be done to consider the diverse communities here in Birmingham, across UK and globe?
So I think if I kind of break that down, before we get into the kind of diverse communities, I think in regards to curriculum, for me, the curriculum has to, first of all, if I go back to what I said earlier, is this concept that PE is physical and education. It's not just I think it was Mikhail Kunisset who talked about big P, little e, where he talks about, a lot of curriculums are very focused on the physical, but actually the education has very little to do with what's going on. So it's making sure that the curriculum is both, it's educational, the learning is the focus, and that is achieved through being physical. And it's how our subject differs to every other subject. I'm not a major fan of the fact of kind of sitting in rows all day, every day, and then a child goes home. I think that lessons should be more active, but I want to try and stay in my lane and not start saying this is how I feel other subjects should be taught. But in regards to physical education, the focus needs to be on the education and the learning, and it's through the physical. So it's both. That's what PE is. But then from that is then what is the learning, and I think it's then concentrating on the domains of learning. So you've not only got the psychomotor physical domain, but you are also considering and developing the cognitive domain, the thinking, the brain activity. You get in children to think through problems and tactics, etc. But you've also got the social domain, and you've got children developing their social skills such as communication and leadership, but also the affective domain, the psychological domain. How are they dealing with pressure? How are they dealing with winning and losing? And I think when I look at a lot of curriculums, and again, I don't really give an opinion. I often just walk around and look at them and don't say much. But you can often see in a lot of curriculums where it is just the physical, and there's very little. There's very little, or in the cognitive, or very little in the social, or it is there, but it's not explicitly kind of pointed out within the curriculum, and therefore it's not then assessed. And the purpose of I often talk about the PAC model, the pedagogy assessment curriculum. So the curriculum is the curriculum is one element, but obviously the pedagogy and the assessment is also the other two elements that make up that kind of triangle, I suppose. So you need an effective assessment model that's going to encourage, inspire, and motivate future learning. So it's not. And again, it goes back to that glass ball analogy. That if your assessment model doesn't do that, if your assessment model is giving children a grade, or giving children like some sort of numbered level or something like that, it's not often that you go along to PE lessons and then someone says you are a 4, out of 10. That's not going to inspire someone for future learning. It's not really going to inspire someone to carry on doing. To do extracurricular or do clubs outside of school. So I think there's got to be, not only is it the curriculum has got to be, for me, inclusive and include all of the domains of learning, but also there's got to be an assessment model that encourages, inspires, and motivates that future learning.
Right.
But then it needs to be taught in a pedagogical way that, for me, and this is my kind of big thing, and it's kind of what's wrapped around my my PhD at the moment, is that I'm a real believer in this concept of making our pupils or students active agents in their own learning. I often talk about Paulo Freire and the banking concept, where he talks about, and this was back in the 70s as well. This where he talks about children just being these passive learners, and the teacher being the master, and they're just banking all this knowledge for that child to have, and then they can take that money out when they need it at any point in their life. And that's for me isn't what education and teaching and learning is. We need to. And again, if we go back to what I said before, in that education is going to be the first 20% of somebody's lifespan, if we base that, if that first 20% and they're just passive and they receive everything from the teacher, they then leave school and they're not going to know how to do anything themselves because the teacher's done it for them. So for me, the biggest element for education, and specifically in physical education, is we as teachers are giving them a skill set to be able to maintain and continue being physically active, understanding physical education throughout then their lifespan. So it's and that comes then down to the pedagogical approach that you use. So less of the teacher-centered approaches, such as kind of command and practice type approaches, and more student-centered approaches. More kind of discovery styles, cooperative learning styles. Where the children or the pupils are, they're playing an active role in what they're doing and how they're doing it. I'm not keen of seeing teachers leading warm-ups all the time. I'm like, as soon as they leave school, they need to know how to lead their own warm-up. They can't just follow you constantly. They've got to know how to do it themselves.
And this is why I agree with what you said, and I think you talked about pedagogical aspect of it. I think it's Schollemann in 1986 about the pedagogical approach to teaching that he mentioned, the students not consume all the knowledge by sitting and listening to the teachers, and then the teachers expecting the students to memorize everything that they spat out. So therefore, and I totally agree with you, and this is where I think PE can play a significant role in leading this when it comes to curriculum or active learning, for example, and involving students to lead either warm-up or lead other aspects of the sessions. And you kind of hinted towards when you talked about the pedagogical and inclusivity aspect. I remembered about the decolonization of the curriculum as well. Because we have such a diverse communities, and you mentioned earlier regarding you have different students from different countries. They were born in different countries, and their experience are not the same as compared to somebody who was born and bred here. Exactly same applied to me when I came to the UK. I was approximately 14 years of age, and I saw this world completely different. So I think if we take that, that decolonization, that pedagogical, that inclusivity approach to our curriculum, I think that can really help the diverse communities that we have, and embed them and encourage them to kind of participate in PE, but also take actively a leading role in it as well, which can then help motivate and encourage other people to follow that as well. Then you talked earlier about PE came into in more light during COVID-19 when some celebrities chose to do something more fitness-wise and kind of rebranded that PE aspect. The education aspect was not there, but the more physical activity side was there. What emerging trends now, following from that, what emerging trends or innovation in physical education are you more excited about? And how do you see these potentially transforming how we teach and understand physical activity?
I mean, the first one, but I can't really say too much on it just yet because it's not going to take place just yet. But I think one of the most exciting things within the PE, within the English curriculum system, I suppose, is the fact that the PE curriculum is up for review at the moment.
Right.
The current national curriculum that schools follow was written in 2013, and if I'm honest, my personal opinion is it's out of date, and it's not really. It's pretty much, for me, it's doing a disservice to us as PE teachers and to our pupils. It needs updating to bring in line with what the PE community are trying to achieve. So it's good that the government now are reviewing the PE curriculum. So it's likely that we will have some form of new or amended curriculum by around, I'm guessing, around 2026.
Okay.
But what that would look like, I don't know. But I'm hoping.
Are you happy about that, Grant? Are you happy and looking forward to?
Oh, absolutely, yeah. I mean, to be honest, I think since about 2018, I've been saying to my students, we need to review this, we need to update it. So I'm glad that that's actually happening now. I mean, I'm hoping it has more to do with mental health and well-being, because at the moment it's purely physical, and it's a lot. The current curriculum is based heavily on sport. It's very kind of games heavy, and also performance. It's always based very much on competition and sports. And I'm hoping the new curriculum, whilst it can still have sport and competition involved, I'm not against competition and sport, because my entire life outside of teaching has been involved in competition and sport. I think it also, it needs to be involved in. It needs to have other things that are being promoted within PE. But I think away from the national curriculum, I think what's exciting to see at the moment are the schools that are basically they're pathfinders, or they're trying new things that other schools aren't trying. They're acknowledging that, and it's often a new head of PE that's come in. They've looked at it and said, "I don't like this. I'm going to do something about it." And they're trialing new curriculum. So we're seeing what some people call a concept curriculum or a thematic curriculum. We're seeing some PE curriculums called lifelong learning curriculums. We've got the term physical literacy being bandied about more. But really, what I'm saying is that's exciting, because it shows that there's a lot of PE teachers out there that are trying to turn things around, and they're trying to do something about it, and make this holistic learning, not just the physical competition domain, kind of be more kind of seen across their teaching across the key stages. So that's good. That's interesting to see at the moment, really.
Well, that's good to hear. I think you may have come across the work of Dr. Irfan Khawaja. Recently have developed this guide on Ramadan, PE and physical activity. I think more kind of inclined to the Muslim kids, how they can be engaged in physical education during Ramadan. I think that has attracted quite positive attention nationally, and I've spoken to him about it as well. And going ahead, I think Ramadan now we're approaching Ramadan again in a couple of months' time. We'll have Ramadan again, much shorter. I think this time of the year, and it's going to get shorter as we move forward now. But I think that has also sparked some sort of positive attention, I think. And I'm sure you may be familiar with that work as well. So hopefully,
I actually saw Irfan last Wednesday. And I was talking to him about it, and I was saying, how well it seems to be going, because I've seen that he's been working with different organisations promoting that. Yeah. But I was saying to him, I said, what surprises me is the fact that we're in 2024 and it hasn't been done before. Like, how have we got here and no one has done this? So, and there's I mean, there's a lot of topics and themes that teachers and physical education teachers look at and go, how come no one's ever done this? And so it does surprise me. The fact, I mean, it's great, it's fantastic work that he's doing, but for me, I look at it and think, how has nobody ever done this? So it's brilliant, and I'm hoping it kind of can gain more and more and more traction.
I think so. Grant, and that, let me ask you this quick question, because as we spoke about it, I remember last year when we had the conference, I presented the physical activity data that we collected across the ethnic minority groups, their physical activity, health, and well-being. And we had loads of PE teachers attended that conference that Irfan organized for that PE and physical activity guide. Most of them actually said what we just discussed now, like, how come nobody thought about this?
Yeah.
One of the things externally that has been communicated, I think within the informal channels, that this guide could potentially be utilized as a weapon by some of the PE teachers to some people or children that comes in and says, you know what, I'm fasting and I cannot participate in physical education today, and therefore I can't do it. So some people or some academics, when I say some, I mean a very, very couple that informally mentioned, or this could potentially be utilized as a weapon, or could be used as a weapon to say, no, look, this guide says Islamically you are allowed to do it, and so on. And I was like, not really, because if a child, unless it's injured or comes with a broken leg, or has some sort of a letter from the parents confirming that this child cannot participate in physical education for whatever reason, then there shouldn't be any excuse for them to say that because I'm fasting and I cannot take part in physical education. As an expert, what do you think? I know you said the guide is good and comprehensive and so on, but what do you think about that guide as an overall before I move on to my next question?
I think, to be honest, it's a toolkit, isn't it? It's there. It's there to give support and guidance for people that don't know what to do. They need help in that situation. There's always going to be, for me, I look at it and think that's a starting point. It opens it starts and opens the conversation, but that's not the end. That's not, I've produced this, that's it now. There's still going to be situations where you've got pupils or students that they might need additional support. There might be students that are using it as a hook to go, actually, I'm going to try and get out of PE through this. So it's not what I'm always against is trying to generalize individuals. So all male Muslims are this, or all female Muslims are this, or that's not the case at all. You can still get really, really sporty male Muslims. You can get really, really lazy male Muslims. It is what it is. It's with what Irfan has created there is a guide to help support staff in how to kind of better support staff with students during Ramadan. And I think for me, it opens the door to future and more learning. I think the other thing as well for me, so I've been at BCU now for almost 8 years. Working in physical education, initial teacher education across both. So working in both primary and secondary, and I think for me, what's been very evident for myself is the demographics of the students that we have coming in. So I know that we have a lot of white students. We have a lot of white I suppose the majority Christian students. We do have normally I'd probably say 30% to 40% we have male Muslim students. But in the 8 years, because I'm not trying to kind of show off a bit here or anything, but I wrote the secondary curriculum for our postgraduate and our undergraduate degree. So I've been there from the very beginning, and since I wrote the secondary curriculum 7 years ago, I can only recall having one female Muslim student ever. In 7 years, and I think that's, for me, that's really important that gets promoted more, because pupils need to see these different people in roles. I remember having so many conversations with her and saying, you're you're this golden teacher
Yes.
in a lot of people's eyes, because some of the girls that you'll be teaching, they've probably never seen a female Muslim PE teacher in their lifespan, and they now themselves, as a female Muslim child themselves growing up, are seeing a Muslim female teacher, when
Yeah.
before it might well have been a white male or a white female, and it's important. So I mean, I don't know the answer to it because I don't have all the answers, but that's something that I would love to see more, is more kind of cultural variety
Yes.
of people that are moving into wanting to become a PE teacher, because it's important then when they go into school that they're represented, that children can look at their teachers and go, oh, this is someone I look up to. This is
Absolutely.
yeah.
Absolutely. That role modeling, it's
Yeah.
so essential, Grant, and I can't agree more with it, because again, going back to research, my own research and most of other research shows that barriers to physical activity and physical education and health and well-being within the Muslim communities are just too many, for example. And the common ones are gender-specific sessions, the mixture of the male and female sessions, for example, that's a gender-specific, but also a role model, and accessibility and so on. For example, we done a research where we compared the males and females of Afghans communities living in the UK, and then I went to Afghanistan and collected data there to physical activity, and we found that females in the UK are actually facing more barriers to participate in physical activity compared to females living in Afghanistan. And when we looked, and when we look at it into details, one of the theme that came out was that in Afghanistan, we have male-specific gyms and we have female-specific gyms and sessions, including parks and everything. In the UK, it's a more of a mixture environment. And an individual was saying, look, I like to go to swimming, but I don't want to mix with other people. I like to participate in this particular class, but I don't want to mix with other colleagues or other males or females, and vice versa. It was kind of applied to both. And also, some other literature suggesting that the Muslim communities in the UK and across Europe has the worst health out of all. And also, if they take time out to participate in half an hour physical activity or do something for their health and well-being, they will be looked as a selfish. And therefore, and that's one of the reasons, for example, I mean, lack of awareness and lack of education is a contributing factor into that. So I'm really pleased to hear that at least you had one student, and I'm sure she'll play some sort of positive role. And I hope she is, and other
Yeah.
people will look up to her.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, she wrote an article for our education journal,
Right.
about her journey to becoming a PE teacher, and that really inspired kind of other kind of students and teachers looking into that and going, this is brilliant, this is great.
Yeah.
But it's just, we need to just keep building on that.
Absolutely. So, Grant, how come, based on that, for example, that the minority of the Muslims or the British South Asians or BAME communities are focusing into the PE subjects compared to the more general public, how come then schools and educators better support the professional development of PE teachers, ensuring they have the skills, knowledge, and motivation to inspire the next generation of physically active individuals?
So with professional development, or CPD, I suppose, there was a lot of work 20 years ago by Kathy Armour and Martin Yelling, who looked at CPD within physical education, and they found that of all the kind of CPD opportunities that were given, it was generally an approach where a teacher would carry out a national governing body level 1 sport award.
Right.
And that was it. So it was kind of this outsourced kind of master apprentice model that was based on sport. There was very little from their findings that was based on, how can a teacher develop or improve their pedagogical approaches? How can a teacher develop or improve their assessment or use of assessment? It was predominantly based on sport, and right. There's been little research in that kind of area since, really. But if you kind of look around what's available nowadays, the Association for PE offer, a lot of different CPD opportunities. They offer, and just through membership, you get access to the resources and webinars and stuff that they offer. I know PE Scholar offer a lot of different CPD opportunities, and the PE Project, I think, it has a really good website that shows lots of different things. But what, for me personally, and this kind of links in with my PhD work, is, right. and I mentioned it earlier about this kind of master apprentice, where the master tells the apprentice what to do and they do it. With that type of approach, for me, it creates that cycle again, where the master says, this is how you do it, and the apprentice just does it, and they redo the cycle. And then in 20, 30 years' time, that apprentice becomes the master, and they reinvent the wheel again. And so I'm very keen, and I often call that vertical learning. So I'm very keen to explore and to develop and look at more horizontal type models, more kind of equitable models, where kind of teachers work with teachers. It's a peer based models. So it could be something that's based on observation. It could just be coaching conversations. But I'm keen to kind of look at ways, and this is one of the models I'm using is a peer based professional development model, where it's not based on somebody telling someone what to do and they just have to bank it away. It promotes them being the active agent of their own professional development. So they're working with a partner. So if it was us two, you would say to me what the stimulus for your development area is, and I would go through a kind of a discussion with you around that, what, and ask you questions. Why is that a target of yours? What's made you think that that's a target of yours? What do you think you're going to do about it? All of these different things to get you thinking and go, right, I think this is what I need to do, and go away to do it. And then there can be that stimulus of the observation as well. I could then observe you do that, and I can then ask you questions and potentially offer ideas for that. Mm-hmm. So I think there needs to be a lot more on peer development approaches, rather than quite often with CPD, you see it's, we'll get a pot of money and we'll invite someone in and they can talk to us for a bit, and then that's it, we've learnt it. And you're like, well, no, if we can put these peer models in where people work with each other, they don't cost anything, because it's just they just cost time. But also it makes you the active agent in your own development, and that's something that really is my current kind of area of working at the moment, alongside all the PE stuff that I'm doing.
I think we'll hopefully get a chance again in near future to do something more specific to your PhD and the things that you're working at. I thought there's so many things that I'm aware that you are doing which are great. But Grant, we can't talk about PE and physical activity and health without bringing your personal journey into it. I know you mentioned at the beginning how you were inspired to kind of choose this career, but your personal experience as a runner. So I want to understand, how do you integrate personal fitness experiences into your academic and professional approach to PE?
So so I wasn't always a runner. I grew up through kind of secondary education and I suppose sixth form education, and I was mostly, I suppose what a lot of people, what quite a lot of males are in England in the kind of 80s and 90s, I suppose, where I was a footballer in the winter, and I was a cricketer in the summer, and I used to position myself as the kind of the next Wakar Yunis or Curtly Ambrose for me. I'm tall, I'm tall, but I'm tall.
But we got fast bowler.
I'd be coming in, and I used to, and I tell you, I used to love the Wakar Yunis's in swings. I never used to go out swing. I was always an in swing bowler. But then when I went to university, we had a guy come in who was talking to us about volleyball, and he did some volleyball kind of skills and stuff with us, and that just got me so excited, and so I just started playing that, and that built up. So and then from that I started playing National League volleyball from about the age of 19 through to about the age of 29, 30, I think it was really. And then I think when I was around 29, 30 years old or so, a colleague of mine, when I was teaching, said to everyone, "Should we enter this race?" It was this running race. And at the time, I was like, "Yeah, I'll play National League volleyball. I must be really fit. Yeah, I'll do it." And then we started training, and it kind of dawned on me that I'm not as fit as I thought I was in regards to running, because the fitness is very different from volleyball, being on a court to running a distance. But what I found from becoming a runner was the outcomes were very different. So with my volleyball, we were playing fixtures across the country. So one weekend we might be in Middlesbrough, one weekend we might be in London, and it was very much a very heavy kind of physical fitness for me in regards to jumping, landing, and moving around the court and stuff. But the social element was great because it was the team. But when I was running, what I found that I didn't have in volleyball was the mental game. So I would go out for a run, and not only obviously the physical, because I'm getting it's a big improvement in my cardiovascular fitness, but it was just what I really liked was me on my own running around, kind of through villages or down country lanes and whatnot. And it was me on my own with my own thoughts, with birds chirping in the background, and I just found that the kind of the mental advantage, the mental benefits of running were fantastic, and it grew and it grew and it grew, and so I went from running probably 5 miles, 10 miles a week to well, I'll say now I'm injured at the moment, but to now, let's say now, but let's pretend I'm not injured. To now I average around 45, 50 miles a week. And what I find for me now, it's partly performance based, because obviously I run for a club, and I enter races and whatnot, but it's a massive mental benefit. That if I've been at university all day and I've been teaching and then I've been marking, I'll go out for a run, and I always say to a lot of people, going for a run will solve a lot of your problems, and often what I'll do is I'll often get home and I've got a notepad on my phone in the hallway, and I'll often write stuff down quickly or put it down in the notepad on my phone, because there'll be something on my mind. So I'll just go for a run, and then whilst I'm running, I'll be thinking it through, and then as soon as I get back, I go, right, this is what I think, this is how I've solved it, and I do that quite often now. And I've done it when we've had Ofsted in. I've gone through all the stuff I've needed to do by lunch, and then I thought, right, lunchtime, I'm just gonna run through lunch. And then when I get back, I can eat my lunch whilst I'm carrying on with work again. And I've just found that with running, it's been a physical, improvement and a physical advantage for me in regards to my life. But for me, it's been the big boost has been the mental and well-being improvements that it's had. But then joining a club has been that social element as well. Mixing with other like-minded individuals. There's one chap in particular that we message each other every day. We meet up for runs, and we go for a run around the local area and stuff. And I think for me, running is, I suppose it's often said running is a metaphor for life, and I can see what people mean, I suppose. But yeah, it's a real good benefit for both physical, mental, and social development, really.
And also you talked about, that thinking that comes in, and having a problem or something, and sometimes it gets to so much, and then we can't think about it, and when we get that movement, kind of get the answers for it. And he says that physical movement does create creative thinking. So, but you are a senior lecturer doing now PhD, and develop this curriculum and everything, and you're super busy academic as well, and this is, I'm saying this from my
I agree.
experience.
I am very busy.
I understand. So I as a senior lecturer, I engage in a lot of physical activity. I go to the gym. I go for running. Maybe not 50 miles a week, but I go football once a week. I go for running about 3-4 times a week. Go gym 3-4 times a week as well. But and one of the commonly reported barrier that we see across the literature in physical activity and health literature that's reported by adults is lack of time, workload, right? And how do you then find time juggling with your academic career, everything else, and still finding time to do 40-50 miles of running or other exercises throughout the week? And what's your advice to those people who are saying, you know what, we don't have time?
Yeah, for me, obviously it's organization, it's time management,
Mm-hmm.
but what it is, it's creating a culture of importance and sticking to it, and basically making a contract with yourself, really, that I'm going to get this done. And what I do at the moment is I have on my Outlook calendar for work, I will have everything that I have to do. And what I'll do is I'll look at that and go, right, how busy am I today? What is it that I'm doing? And what I'll then do is calculate how long, because obviously my training now isn't just kind of the same distance, same speed. I'll change it up, so I'll have different distances, different paces. Yeah. So then I'll work out, well, what is it? When am I going to do short interval stuff, fast stuff? When am I going to do kind of moderate, long stuff? And then but also, what is the stuff that I'm actually doing? And then within my week, I work out, well, when am I going to do these things? So sometimes I'll be up at kind of 6:30, 7, and I'll go for a run before work starts. If for example, say on Monday, I was at work at 8 a.m. and I didn't get home till 5. So what I then did, as soon as I get home, I just kind of got changed, put my shorts on and stuff, and went out the door.
Right.
So sometimes it'll be before, sometimes it'll be at the end. Sometimes, if I'm working from home, what I find really helps me is to run at lunchtime, because not only does it fit it in during sunlight hours, but I'm generally more productive in the day because I've gone for a run in the middle of the day. Because what I sometimes find, if I'm at university and I'm not able to kind of move around, as the day progresses, I've just become more sluggish and I feel more tired. And actually, it's kind of paradoxical, I suppose, isn't it? But by being more active, you actually will wake up more. And so I find now, if I go for a run at lunchtime, I just get so much done in the afternoon then, because I can just, I've got a standing desk that turns into a seating desk, but I can kind of sit or stand as to what I'm doing. But yeah, so that's how I kind of work it now, is I look at my calendar and I'll work out when can I fit this in, how long do I need, and I make sure I do it. And I kind of have a contract with myself and say, I'm going to do it. And I just get really stubborn. But it's understandable, I think, especially through the winter. It's very easy. I know yesterday was and Wednesday and Thursday was awful. But it's very easy to look out of the window and it's dark, it's cold, it's pouring down a rain, and you say to yourself, well, actually, I won't do anything today. I'll do it tomorrow. And then it gets to tomorrow, the weather's the same. You go, well, actually, I'll start on the weekend.
Yeah.
And actually, if that's the kind of the kind of view you'll take, you just probably won't get it done. You won't ever go out. So you've got to just be very strict with yourself and say, this is why I'm doing it. It's actually, I know that I'm going to get soaking wet, but as soon as I get in, I can have a shower, I can get changed, I can put some warm clothes on, and actually, it's made me feel a lot better. Mentally, physically, I'm going to be a lot better. And actually, it's put me in a better place. But it's having that stubbornness with yourself and making that contract with yourself that this is what I'm going to do. And I think once you've done it for a certain length of time, and I read a study, I think it was about a year ago, where it said it's getting it to a point where it's part of your life cycle. And I'm sure the study was something like around 60 days. And to get something within your kind of daily habits was 60 days. But now, like, everyone that knows me now knows that I'll be going for a run at some point, because that's just my character now. That's who I am. That's what I do. And so now it'd be quite odd for me not to go for a run. So yeah, I think it's just being stubborn with yourself, getting yourself out the door. And once you're out the door, that's it. Go and do whatever it is you go and do, even if it's 15 minutes or 20 minutes or 10 minutes.
Definitely. I think even that physical activity guidelines, for example, although it might not be applicable to every single individual, but half an hour a day, and you can get the pockets of physical activities, like 10 minutes in the morning, 10 minutes afternoon, 10 minutes evening, if needed, just to go out for a brisk walking or moderate type of activities. And I think I totally agree with what you said there, Grant. It's, making that commitment to yourself. And then, lack of time, as I mentioned, it's the commonly reported barrier by adult populations. And then you're like, okay, I've also lead a busy life. You lead a busy life, and so is everybody else. But it does come down to your organization skills, your time management and commitments, and also prioritization. And I think physical activity, exercise should be the top thing in everybody's daily to-do list.
Yeah, absolutely.
So Grant, I want to ask you a last question. If you could implement one major change in physical education nationwide, or a couple of things, you are free to say as many as you like, what would it be and why?
I mean, this is this is going to just be such a convoluted answer. I mean, there's an ideological answer here, and then but could can it even be realised? And then there's the answer that maybe could be realised over time. So I think the ideological answer really is it would be great if, in regards to what we could change, is to kind of improve. I'm not going to use the term change so much, but improve the general public's view and understanding of what PE is. And I know, the Association for PE often, they have posters on, this is what physical education is, this is what sport is, this is what physical activity is. But the number of times in my career I've been called the sports teacher, or you'll often get a kind of a derogatory explanation of what I do. Oh, all you do is jump on a field and they run around and kick a ball. I'm like, well, that's actually not what we do. So I think one kind of, ideological change, I suppose, would be just the public understanding of what the purpose and aims and objectives of PE are, in that it's physical and education, and it's about teaching and learning in a physical domain. So that would be fantastic. But then from that, I think what would be the next thing that would, I think, change wise, would be for in order to improve the health of the nation, would be to ensure that I always say to my students at the end of every practical session that we do, and say, look, whatever happens, even if you get this wrong or you've tried this approach and it hasn't quite worked out, as long as the lesson was inclusive and everyone was able to take part, And as long as the lesson was enjoyable in some ways, that everyone can take, they're walking back to the change rooms, they went, oh, that was good fun, I like that. And then there was some sort of learning or progression or development that happened. As long as those three things happen, all of the other bits and pieces are just bells and whistles, as long as it's, enjoyable, inclusive, and they've learned something or they can take something from it, you've won. They're going to come back and do it again.
Yeah.
When you miss those things out, when it's, if it's not enjoyable or if it's not inclusive, that's when we start having an impact on students, and they're not going to be, wanting to take part in physical education or be physically active. But I think the major change really is going to be what happens with the national curriculum over the next year and a half, really, and what impact that will then have on what teaching looks like in schools from around 2026, and will it change? Will schools actually follow that, or will they do their own thing? Will it be a continuation of the cycle?
I think, Grant, we leave it there, and it's inclusivity, enjoyability, and learning progression in lessons. I think these are the three home take messages for me. Next time I'm teaching, I'll definitely ask the students that question. Was my session inclusive? Did they enjoy it? And also, did they learn something new? Grant, thank you very much for your time.
Brilliant.